Hi guys, my name is Bobby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you my March wrap up. So first of all, just to check in, how is everybody doing? You guys holding up okay? Hope you're getting some reading done. Sorry if I move a lot. I just worked a long shift, just took a shower, and just sitting here, my back's already starting to hurt, and I've been sitting here for 5 minutes. So I'm sorry if I adjust a lot, and for some reason, this thing is still wobbly and I can't stand it. So every time I move, it seems to wobble. Doesn't matter how much I tighten it. But I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you guys are getting some reading in and some relaxation and distance from the media so you're not getting anxious, because there's a lot of stuff out there right now, a lot of it not true or being blown up. And just, I've been staying away from the media. I've been staying away from the news. I just go on my book stuff. I go on YouTube, watch Netflix, read, just trying to taking it seriously, but not stressing myself out or making myself anxious over it, because I'm an essential worker. So I've been working a lot of hours and been around a lot of public, and a lot of them are like, we had a couple today that are, it's just, you shouldn't be out in public if you're that panicked, because the way you treat others is not okay, just because we're all in this situation together. We're all in this together. You acting like a jerk isn't going to make it better. But I hope you guys are all doing okay. We're all okay here. We're still on lockdown and we'll be until May 4th in our state. So far, they'll probably extend it further. They just keep pushing it back and pushing it back. At this rate, our kids probably won't go back to school. Matt still isn't working because he works for a restaurant. He's a chef, so he's still out, but he's cooking me awesome dinners at home, so I guess there's that. So I've been working a whole bunch to try to make sure that we get our bills paid and all that stuff. So I got a lot of reading done in March. I have April is the Owls, which if you've seen my TBR, that's what I'm focusing on. I'm already, where is it? I'm halfway through one, and I'm going to start the audiobook of another one today. I'm trying to keep on pace. Hopefully I can do it. I've been so busy and working like 6 days a week that it's, when I'm home, when I go to read, it puts me to sleep because I'm so tired already. So I've been binge watching Netflix. If you guys haven't watched The Tiger King, you guys need to watch that shit. It's fucking hilarious. But I've been watching a lot of Netflix documentaries and stuff like that, and just zoning out and just shutting everything out. So let's get into the wrap up. I read 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Most of these, let's see. Okay, I read 2 physically, 3 on audio, and I DNF'd 1. So let's get into it. So at the beginning of March, I was in Vegas. Thank God we were able to go before all of this went down. When we went to Vegas, it was just starting, just the very beginning of the virus stuff was coming out, and that's why they made the no touch rule. We weren't allowed to touch the actors, and it was great that we got to have that experience, because I'll never get to do it again. So we lucked out in that respect, but it was like right after we got back. I mean, shortly thereafter, everything shut down. So while I was in Vegas, I listened to 2 audiobooks, which I don't know how that even fucking happened. I know most of it's because my body wakes me up really early in the morning, because I go to work at like 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning, midnight. So even when going to bed at like 10, 11 or whatever, my body would wake me up at like 5, 6 maybe. And Amanda and Adrian were still sleeping, so I just put in my headphones, listen to my audiobook, and do the color by numbers on my tablet. And I mean, I was banging out. I think I banged out the first book in 3 days, and the other one in 2. And then I didn't pick another one because I finished the other one right before, but it didn't take me long to read through 2 of them, because I'm now listening at 2 times speed. But the first book I finished was The Gifted School by Bruce Holsinger. So this is a contemporary, I would say, contemporary literary fiction, which is, contemporary is usually not my genre, but this has one of my main triggers that I love in it. It is a bunch of spoiled ass rich people and them being obsessed with a gifted school. So it's in a fictional town. I can't even remember the name of the town. Oh, Crystal, Colorado. So it's in a fictional Colorado town where there's this group of friends, and they're all friends, and they all have kids right about the same age, around 10, 11, 12-ish, around Danielle's age. And they all want their kids to be gifted for some reason. And it's a really weird fixation. Like, they all want their kids to be super special at something, and the parents are always competing with each other about how good, well, my kid's better than your kid, and it's really strange. So it's very frenemies. But I honestly don't think I would have made it through this book if it wasn't for the audiobook. The audiobook is fantastic. This doesn't have a lot of plot. It's very character driven and it's really slow moving. I think it only takes place over 2 or 3 months. And this is a huge book. It's over 500 pages. Or no, almost 500 pages. It's like 450 or 460. But it's very much a slice of life looking at these people who have a lot of money and just want their kid to be gifted. And they all go to the regular schools, but they're in advanced classes and shit like that. And they take equestrian lessons and they do, you know, competitive swimming, and they do like all sorts of stuff at home like they force them to do. And it's just insane. I mean, it's like helicopter parenting to the max. And there's all these different families. So you have like 6 or 7 kids, and there's one of the moms of the core 4. She has 2 kids that are older. One's 16 or 17, and then her son is like 13 or 14. And her son is definitely a genius, and you can tell through the story that he's very gifted. He reminds me of somebody on the spectrum because he is so focused on certain things that it seems like he has Asperger's. That was never said on page, but being a mom of an autistic child, you could see, but he was just very, very intelligent. And though there is no plot, it's just they build a school for the gifted, and it's in their town, and so they're going everywhere in the surrounding county and testing all these kids. And you don't have to be tested if you don't want to see if they can get into the gifted school. And the whole point of that is to get into the areas that have more diversity or, you know, more poor and don't have a lot of money to pay for this. And the school district is paying for this gifted school so these kids can go there for free, and it's not a private school. So you have a couple of kids that are considered living in the slums and stuff like that who are brilliant and gifted. They just happen to not be born to rich people, and giving them opportunities. So it touches a little bit on some serious subjects, but most of it was about these 4 women who treat each other like shit. And it's just, especially the main 2. So Azra, Lauren, Samantha, and Rose. And Rose and Samantha are the ones that are most like frenemies, and they're supposed to be best friends. And you get a little insight on how these women met. They all met when their children were toddlers at like a mommy and me swimming class, and they've kind of grown up together through the years. And like Rose and Sam, both of their daughters are named Emma, so they call them Emma Z and Emma Q, which are their last names. And so it's very slice of life, and you get perspectives from the children as well, which I kind of liked. So even though these girls or these kids are like 12, you kind of get an insight into how they feel about what their parents are doing, which was kind of interesting, and what their perspective was, and how competitive they were getting with each other, and how they just wanted to be gifted because they want to make their parents happy. And so part of it is kind of sad in that respect, but it was good. I gave it 3 or 4. I should have looked at my ratings before I started filming. I can't remember. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. I mean, it was good, and it kept me really entertained, and the audiobook was really, really fantastic, but it wasn't like something spectacular. Like, I'll probably never read this again. I probably will forget about it soon. I mean, I couldn't even remember the characters' names, and it's been a month since I read it. But there's a little twist at the end that you can kind of see coming. I mean, you couldn't see it at the beginning, like in the last quarter, and you knew like one of these kids had to do a science project, and you can tell by one of the kids what their science project is, that you can easily guess what's going to happen. And so it shakes things up with the group and all that. But I mean, it was pretty good. Great on audio. I suggest if you want to pick this one up and it sounds interesting, pick it up on audio. But I'm glad I finally got it read because it's a book of the month pick, and it's been sitting here since July of last year. So trying to knock out them book of the month books. Okay, so after I finished The Gifted School, I needed another audiobook to listen to while I was in Vegas. So I was thinking about the ones that were on my TBR from the previous month and this month, and what did I want to pick up. And so I was kind of in the mood for something totally different than The Gifted School. So on audio, I listened to Unsub by Meg Gardner. I keep wanting to say Gardner, but it's not, it's Gardner. And like, it's not that difficult, quit making it harder. But yeah, so I picked up Unsub. This I have on ebook as well, and I had tried reading it years ago when I was really focused on my Kindle. It was right before I got into BookTube as a viewer, and I just put it down because I've been reading tons of thrillers. Like Kindle Unlimited is where I would read all of my thrillers and stuff like that. So this one I put down. I found it on, I can't remember, it's not Book Outlet. Yeah, I got this on Book Outlet. In hardcover. I'm like, ooh, well, I'll get it maybe if I read it physically. And then while I was in Vegas, I decided to read it on audio, which is also really fantastic. The audiobook narrator is great. But this tells the story of Caitlin, who is a detective in San Francisco, and she is a narcotics detective who very quickly gets transferred to, she gets moved to homicide for one very specific reason. There was a serial killer back in the 70s or 80s called the Prophet who killed a whole bunch of people and put like these symbols and stuff on them, and like nobody could find out who did it. And the detective who was lead on the case was Caitlin's dad, and the case destroyed him to where he had to retire. It affected him mentally. He has a lot of problems now. And so with her, she was in narcotics, and they brought her into homicide because another murder happens, and it's been 20 something years. And another murder happens, and it's just like the Prophet. So they bring her in to try to get insight from her dad to figure out who this person is, hence unsub, which is the FBI's way of explaining or naming an unspecified person or suspect in a serial killer case. So it is, Caitlin is a really spunky, fiery, but damaged person. It's very much you kind of have the damaged detective trope, but in a different way. Like, daddy didn't pay attention to me because he was too focused on his job. And so of course I followed in his footsteps kind of deal. And now I'm kind of doing the same thing, only she doesn't have a child. But you kind of get that trope, which you see a lot in detective fiction, but I really enjoyed this one. There is 3 books in the series. It's called the Unsub series. I don't know if she's writing a 4th one, but the series is really good, and each single book is based off of an actual serial killer. I believe the Prophet was based off of not the son of Sam, the Zodiac killer, because he was never caught. But this is based off the Zodiac. It's totally different than the Zodiac killer. I mean, yes, the Prophet sends messages to the media and stuff like that, but he doesn't write like codes and all that shit like the Zodiac did. And he writes symbols and stuff on their bodies, and they start to, I mean, they find who the Prophet is in this, and as they go through, Caitlin figures out what he's doing, what his motivation is, and why he's doing what he's doing, and what everything means. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of Seven, the movie Seven, a little bit, mixed with the Zodiac killer. It was really, really good. It was a very, very fast-paced book. It was really easy for me to read. I started this because I read The Gifted School on audio. I started this in Vegas, and then I finished it my second shift back at work. During my graveyard, I usually listen to music on my headphones, and I listened to this instead and finished it. So it was really, really good, and because I really enjoyed it, I then picked up the second book in the series, which I can't remember because I'm not looking at it. I think it's called Into the Black Nowhere, I believe. I think. Either way, picture will be on the screen on whichever side I choose. But this follows Caitlin after Unsub, and without too many spoilers, I guess I'll give you a tiny one that's kind of inconsequential. The FBI takes notice of her in Unsub for what she did in solving the Prophet case, so they make her an FBI agent under the Behavioral Science Unit, which I find very fascinating, and they start chasing another serial killer, and I can't remember what they called him. And that book was based on Ted Bundy, loosely based on Ted Bundy. This I gave 4 stars. The second one, I gave only 3. I wasn't really as much of a fan. Like, you could see where it was going. Where in Unsub, I couldn't see where it was going. Like, I did know who the killer was going to be. And the killer was kind of surprising, and it was like one of those where, like, I was really excited to keep going. With Into the Black Nowhere, you find out who the killer is, not even 50 pages in? She catches him? Not even, maybe 100. She catches him. In Unsub, you don't get, I don't know which side I'm doing on Unsub, you don't find out who the killer is until like the last 100 pages, when it's like the climax, and they get to the end and they find him, and and all this stuff, and the big showdown happens. In the second book, and like within the first 100 pages, who the killer is. She finds him, she tracks him, she knows exactly who he is, she is fantastic at her job. And so the rest of the book is more about like the Ted Bundy-esque stuff, where trying to get him to confess to these murders, and you know, has he murdered in other states because he travels and like all that kind of stuff. So it's focusing more on that than the finding out who it is. And I found that I really enjoyed the finding out who it is way more than I enjoyed, you know, sitting there going, okay, I already know, but now I want to know the ins and outs and why, and trying to get into his head. In nonfiction, I care about that when it's somebody who's analyzing, like an actual behavioral science person who is analyzing serial killers, then I find it interesting. But in my fiction, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time where Caitlin is in her head trying to, while this guy is getting into her head and trying to figure out why is he doing what he's doing. I need to know. And, you know, more of that and trying to get him to confess even though she knows he's done it. So, I mean, I didn't like it. I think I only gave that one 3 stars, 2.5, 3 stars, because it's not nearly as good. And I haven't picked up the 3rd one yet, but it's on my list to pick up. But if you are looking for a new thriller-ish series and you don't mind detective stuff, but it's a little, if you get past the cliche of like, I'm a damaged detective because my daddy didn't pay enough attention to me, though they do end up with a good relationship later on, then I highly suggest it, especially since it focuses on other serial killer cases, real life serial killer cases, and it puts a twist on it. Like, it's not a carbon copy. I highly recommend them because I highly enjoyed Unsub, and the audiobooks are fantastic. The narrator's great as well. Okay, the next book was my DNF, and it was my booktube darling, and please don't come for me, but I DNF'd Beartown. Yeah, I know a lot of you are going to be upset. I know Vicky was upset. I mean, she understands. I mean, there are some people just don't get along with other books, you know, certain books or whatever. So, I mean, she understands. But yeah, I DNF'd this about 100 pages in. I could not stand this book. This book is all about hockey. And I knew hockey was a big part of this book, but the whole premise is that this is a small town and all they have is hockey. They're way out in the middle of nowhere, and hockey is the driving force in this town. And there is a girl who is the daughter of one of the, like, I think he's the hockey coach. The coach or the president or whatever, and she is raped by the star hockey player on the team. And then it goes into what happens after that, the aftermath, how the town reacts, who takes sides, blah, blah, blah. This is 100% about hockey. It is more about hockey than it is about the sexual assault from what I could see from where I stopped. And I could easily see where I stopped, where this was going, and it pissed me off. So I was just, no, I didn't want to read it. I have a theory about where it was going to go, and that's a feeling I kind of get. I did some research online afterwards, and I was correct in where I thought it was going to go, and that just pissed me off. I do not like sexual assault stories, mild spoilers, or I guess it is kind of a spoiler. Okay, spoiler until I put the book down. I do not like stories where, I do not like rape or sexual assault stories where the male is excused because he's an athlete or an actor or somebody of power, or, you know, if we don't let him off on this, you know, we need this for our town, to where she's pretty much swept under the rug and treated like shit, and he's allowed to get away with it because he's a star. And I am not okay with that. I do not like reading stories about that. To me, that's not impactful. That makes, I don't like it. I wasn't a really big fan of his writing style either. It just didn't sit well with me. I don't know. I guess we each have our own, and I feel really bad, but I won't be picking up any more Bachman books. It's just, he's obviously not the one for me, and I really hate hockey. I love a lot of sports, but I hate hockey. So I didn't rate this because I didn't feel it was fair to rate this, but I'm really sorry. I hate one of your guys' favorites. It just wasn't for me. And it's like, it sucks that you have the book guilt. Like, you don't want to say, hey, I know this is a beloved book and everybody fucking loves it, but I hate it. I feel guilty about it, but it is what it is. I did not like this one. The next book I read was one that I haven't even hauled yet. It was one that I bought right after we got our tax return. I bought like I bought 8. I bought 8 books, and this was one of them, and I read it immediately. Like, I ignored my TBR, read it immediately, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And that's Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Warble. So this, I love true crime. And this is a fictionalized version of the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story. And Gypsy Rose and her mom, Dee Dee. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. This case. This got really big like 1 or 2 years ago. Gypsy Rose was a normal girl, and it is one of the most severe cases of Munchausen's by proxy in the United States. And if you don't know what that is, Munchausen's by proxy is when a parent, it's usually a parent, but and especially a mother, but a parent or guardian intentionally makes people around them sick, whether it be their spouse, usually their children, because they're kind of powerless and dependent on them, elderly parents, children, or a spouse, and intentionally makes them sick or pretends that they are sick for attention. And this is one of the worst cases in the United States history. So Gypsy Rose murdered her mother, or had her boyfriend murder her mother. Gypsy Rose, from the time she was like 1 or 2, her mom treated her like she was sick and always said she was sick, and did things to her to make her sick, made her shave her head, even though she could walk, made her be in a wheelchair, got a whole bunch of donations, a house bill, all this stuff, and made everybody feel sorry for them, and none of the doctors ever figured it out. She told everybody she had cancer, and she had this, and she had that, and Gypsy knew that she was okay. She knew that there was nothing wrong with her, and, you know, but she couldn't tell anybody. Her mom told her, would tie her up to her bed and said, you're not allowed to tell anybody, blah, 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 blah. She would drug her, do all sorts of stuff. So they had to get internet at one point so that she could do her schoolwork because she was homeschooled. She got on online chat rooms, met a guy, they started dating, whatever. And so he killed her mom. And now he's in jail for the rest of his life, I believe. And she is in for 5 to 10 years, I can't remember, which I think is too much. That's a form of horrific abuse, and to be abused that long and treated like that for so long. They said her emotional stability and her emotional maturity was that of probably like an 8 or 9-year-old because her mom had stunted her so much. So yeah, she's in prison. So this author decided to do a fictionalized version of this and call it Rose Gold instead of Gypsy Rose. And the mom's name is Patricia instead of Dee Dee, and they call her Patty. So there are parallels, only this is very different. This is like the aftermath. So this is the same kind of concept. Rose Gold was, her mom it's very severe Munchausen's by proxy. Her mom intentionally made her sick for years, and she believed that she was sick for years and everything she told her. And you get alternating perspectives from her mom and Rose Gold. So you get both. And her mom gets convicted of multiple counts of child abuse and blah, blah, blah. And she's in jail for 5 years. I believe it's 5 years. Yeah. And so her mom is getting out of prison, and Rose Gold goes to pick her up and lets her mom move in with her. And it kind of starts from there. So you get flashbacks to the past, mostly Rose Gold. You get Rose Gold's flashbacks to the past in her chapters, and the present chapters are Patty's chapters. So you get what's going on in the present is Patty and from her perspective, and then the past is Rose Gold, and the past starts when her mom goes to jail or gets arrested, I believe, and like going through the trial and all that. So you get the back and forth, and then eventually Rose Gold catches up into the present timeline. I'm sorry about the jet. But it was so fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Was it predictable? Yes. If you know the story of Gypsy Rose, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, it's very predictable to kind of understand. Only, I guess, mild spoiler, in this book, they don't kill her. But she twists the story enough to make it very much fictional and not a carbon copy of the Gypsy Rose story. And I mean, the name is what gets me, because I want to say Gypsy Rose, but it's Rose Gold for the book, and Gypsy Rose is the person. But you can definitely see the parallels. It was really enjoyable. It was a fast read. I read it in 2 sittings. I highly recommend it if you know anything about the case and you were fascinated by the case. This author does a really good job, especially from Rose Gold's point of view and what she felt like being in the position of always being sick and always thinking she was sick and being made fun of, and all the stuff that came along with that, and growing up and losing her childhood because of her mom's sickness. It was amazing. I highly recommend it if you guys are into this stuff at all. Okay, the last book that I read was an impromptu buddy read with Vicky, because we can't seem to frickin' help ourselves. But that is This House is Haunted by John Boyne. So we literally picked this up at the last part of the month. We finished this on the last day of March. And this is, we both gave it 4 stars. This is a tongue-in-cheek book that is playfully making fun of gothic horror stories, specifically stuff like Turn of the Screw and kind of like a little bit of The Haunting of Hill House, and what was the other one? that was mentioned that's kind of like it's tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's not... It was good. So this starts out just like Turn of the Screw, where you have a young woman who's 21 years old. This takes place in the 1870s? 1860s, 1867. And her father passes away, so she's all alone. So the house that she's in, she gives up. And she takes this governess job in Norfolk and leaves London. And, of course, the house is haunted. So it's very much like Turn of the Screw, but different. Because, spoilers for Turn of the Screw, in this book, there's actually ghosts. In the Turn of the Screw, there is no ghosts. This one actually has ghosts. And was it predictable? Yes. Was it very gothic? Also, yes. It was very creepy in certain parts. John Boyne's writing is fantastic. He writes in a way that's a lot like Charles Dickens, so it's very much 1800 style writing. So you get the way they talk, and he was really good with how they communicate and the words they used and their extreme manners and stuff like that. It was fantastic. We read this very quickly. And this was more of like a 3.5 because it is predictable, but I think he wrote it that way. I don't think he intended it to be, oh my God, there's a big twist surprise, because it's a gothic historical horror. It's not going to be a big shock, but it was really good. I'm glad we knocked another John Boyne off the list. There isn't much left, but this one was fantastic for what it was. It was really good for what it was. What I found amusing, which was another nod to Dickens, because either John Boyne loves Dickens or he made it, I'm assuming he does, because the main character, Eliza, her dad was a huge Charles Dickens fan. And at the very beginning of the book, Charles Dickens is speaking at a bookstore, and so he wants to go see him, and it's just down the road from where they live in London. And she's insisting that they don't go because he's sick and he's had a cough, which you can clearly tell from like page 1 is tuberculosis. And he insists, and they go anyways, and then it pours down rain and they get cold, and they go and watch him read a story, and then they come back and he's dead by the next day. So I mean, it's TB. I mean, when they were sitting there in the reading and he's coughing up blood, it was very evident. And for the times, it makes sense. So he was obsessed. Her dad was obsessed with Charles Dickens. He'd read all of his books. Eliza had read a lot of her books. And it was hilarious because Eliza makes a comment when she gets to Norfolk. She goes to talk to the lawyer who's running the estate of Godlin Hall, where she's the governess of these two children, Isabella and Eustace. And the guy... The guy who's like the clerk, like the front desk clerk for the lawyer, his name is Cratchit, and she makes a comment about it, and he's like, oh, everybody makes fun of my name. She goes, no, haven't you ever heard of, you know, Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol and, you know, Cratchit? And he's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, and it was kind of funny. Like, you can see John Boyne is teasing and making fun of at the same time as telling a really awesome gothic horror story. I really enjoyed it. I loved that there was actual supernatural ghosts in here. It made it more creepy and more fun to read, and it wasn't some stupid ass dumb twist where it's like, oh no, it was just the kids messing with her, or oh no, it was all her imagination and she was actually crazy. I liked that it was actually ghosts. And I like, the one thing that kind of threw me off was Eliza was a little bit worldly for being only 21 in the 1860s. Like, there is this one point in time where she pretty much yells at a Catholic priest for not believing in ghosts, and pretty much calls out religion and him for believing in heaven and hell and purgatory, but thinking ghosts are impossible. And he goes, well, it's all on faith. And she goes, well, you can't have faith that there's ghosts too, and that they might get stuck here and not go to heaven, hell, or purgatory. And she pretty much calls him out, and that seemed a little too forward for somebody of this time period, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I'm glad that she told him off. But this was a fantastic read. If you're looking for a good gothic ghost story that's a really fast read, even though slightly predictable, I suggest you pick this one up. Okay, guys, that's it. That's my March wrap up. That's my 6 books. My best reading month yet. It's better than 2 or 1 where I've been at. Already doing a good start this month. I am halfway through my first Owls book, and I'm going to start my second one here soon with an audiobook. Hopefully I can bust through that today. We'll see. Depends on how I feel. Like, my mood changes every 5 seconds. But that is it, guys. Please let me know down in the comments down below if you've read these books and what you thought of them. How does your March going, or how did your March go? Are you guys doing okay? Check in, say hello, let me know you guys are alive and breathing and doing well. Hope you guys all stay healthy, stay inside, don't go anywhere, stay home until this craziness is over. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.